Radyo-Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo-Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo-Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
The Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela.
Katipunan, radyo-katipunan, 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 radyo-katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo-katipunan, radyo-katipunan, radyo-katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, dunong at tulog. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo-katipunan, radyo-katipunan,
Welcome to World College Radio Day. This is Radio Katipunan 87.9 FM, the voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo-Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo-Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo-Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
The Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight.
Mga Katipuneros, it's time to level up! Your talk variety program showcasing the best in media and other fields. As we feature the most loved personalities and the best practices of what we truly refer to as Magis. Together with multi-awarded multimedia guru Mr. Noel Ferrer, let's all level up every Fridays from 3 to 6 p.m. here on Radyo-Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Radio Day, and it is such a good time that you're here, and it's also your birthday. But because it's your birthday, we have the whole network trying to greet you and then honor you. So we have our boss here, Father Nono Alfonso. Like to welcome you kasi grabe pala may tie-up pala Maria with Rappler, yung Radyo Katipunan. So Father Nono, go do the honors.
Yes, Maria, hi. I hope you remember me.
Yes!
Okay, so we're glad that you're very healthy and well. Happy birthday!
You know you don't celebrate your birthday when you get to my age, so thank you.
Yes, but we're very happy we are very happy for ourselves as well that you're there inspiring us to keep the fight. Anyway, so I'm just here as a station manager to welcome you and to thank you for the tie-up between Radio Katipunan and Rappler.com. We get our news from Rappler.com courtesy of Chayo Filenia. So thank you so much for that partnership.
No, we're so happy with it. Thank you, Father Nono.
And you're really working on your birthday. Let Father Nono shoot his question because he told us that he'll have a moment with the Father Provincial after this. But Father's very concerned about your cases. So Father, go.
Yes. Last year I was able to interview you. Konti pa lang yung kaso. So I'd just like to ask, can you update us on the cases? Meron ng isang ruling, but you were the last time we heard you were appealing it.
Yes. So there are, I always put this in the context of everything else, because when you put it all together, then you see why the cases are there, and then you see also why we take the positions we take. So in 2016, the social media attacks began. And, I'll use this, one of the attacks then, which I laughed about, was journalist equals criminal. I was like, by next year, I'll be 35 years a journalist, and so I was like, there's too much of what I've done in the past. So I was laughing, which was kind of stupid of me now, because, when you say journalist is a criminal a million times on social media, it becomes a fact to some people. And then in 2017, the State of the Nation address in July 2017, President Duterte essentially came top down and said, Rappler is a criminal. In fact, there are 3 buckets of charges that they then filed in 2018. So right about a week after the State of the Nation address in 2017, July, we got our first subpoena. 2018 was the year that the government filed 11 cases against us in about 14 months. That's 2018. And then 2019 was the arrest. That was when I got 8 arrest warrants. I posted bail 8 times. In about a 3-month period, I was arrested twice, even though it was really clear that I am going to, submit myself to the process, because I'm absolutely certain I will win the case. If it not, I will watch what I say. And then, of course, in 2020, journalist equals criminal. June 15th, a former colleague and I were found guilty in a regional court. So in an RTC. So we've appealed the cyber libel case to the Court of Appeals. And, this is kind of a very strange time for me, because I never thought that would happen. If you think about it, just for this cyber libel, this case, this story was published 8 years ago. It is a story I didn't write, edit, or supervise. And the law we supposedly violated wasn't even in place when we published the story. So, I read Kafka again, but I feel like Joseph K. in the trial. So I since then, our cases fall into 3 buckets. Cyber libel. I have 2 more complaints that have come in just in the last few weeks. And then I have tax evasion, 5 cases. Those are all ongoing now. Look, the way that the government was able to file tax evasion charges against us is by saying that Rappler is a dealer in securities. We're not a stock brokerage firm, so we don't have to pay those taxes. So that's another. And then the last one is the mother case. I call that the securities fraud, and that would include anti-dummy. It includes the SEC administrative charges. I mean, think about it. It all began because of an SEC administrative charge, kind of like ABS, I suppose. A minor regulatory agency gave us a shutdown order in January of 2018. And we keep fighting that, but we'll see where it goes. I guess, where is it, Father Nona? Since the last time we saw each other, I'm flabbergasted because I want to believe in the rule of law. I really do, because I think you cannot have democracy if you don't have rule of law. And so we continue to fight each one. The conviction is it's kind of like a line in the sand that's hard to go back on, because in order to convict us in the regional trial court, they actually changed the statute of limitations or the period of prescription of libel from 1 year to 12 years. And that's a really bad precedence to set. But anyway, sorry, you can tell. I can talk a mile a minute.
Yes. But we're
But okay lang. You know what? I guess it's like, do not voluntarily give up your rights. This is what I know. For every Filipino who is watching what is going on, who is feeling what is going on, the age of social media is an age of feeling. But, we have to stop thinking fast. That's the feeling, and think slow. That we have to demand rational, logical explanations. And I think the last part, never voluntarily give up your rights, and make sure that, you know this by now, I've used the phrase hold the line, because we want the government to succeed. Because if the government fails, we all fail, right? And when you fail in COVID, you die. The same way that a lie during COVID can kill, right? So we want the government to succeed, but at the same time, we hold government to account. And there are trillions of pesos that are being released. There is tremendous power that is being consolidated, and rule of law. Law is one of the few ways that we can hold power to account. And slowly we're seeing this erosion. So I guess, sorry, what a long-winded answer. The answer is that I feel like I have no choice, me personally, but to fight for my rights. But as I'm doing that, I feel every Filipino has no choice. Because if you don't fight for your rights, you will lose them.
But how has that affected the operations of Rappler, Maria?
Noel, Noel and I used to work together, right?
I had to leave my breakfast team, my very comfortable breakfast team with sina Atom, Bam, Ria, because you needed me in the morning show. So I had to wake up 5:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning for the 5:30 show. But then, Maria, we've always looked up to you and then said, you have to succeed, right with your cases. So how's the organization, your organization dealing with all these things? Is it affected at all?
Forged in fire. When you're forged in fire, you're stronger. Look, I mean, all of us are tired about we work all the time. And Rappler is a startup. We always thought that we would work really, really hard and then we can kind of relax. You can't relax, and certainly not during COVID, right? So I think that, I quote this guy all the time, Nietzsche, who said, "What doesn't kill us will make us stronger." I hate to use the word kill in during the war. I mean that I guess what happened to Rappler is it's almost self-selected. The people who are there, we know why we do what we do. We know that it's important to keep doing what we do, and in a weird way, Noel, we've had to manage a lot of people. And in any organization, there will always be frictions, personalities, I want more pay, I want more power. And since the attacks of the government really began, what happened is we pulled in and talked to each other a lot more. We were forced to be very, very honest about everything, including worst case scenarios, because we drilled the worst case scenarios, right? Like, so for example, when Pia Renada was banned from the palace, thank
Yes.
God a few days earlier, we just drilled. We did a drill of how fast you can take out your cell phone and go live. And what things do you have, what workflow do you use to do that? And so when she was denied entry to the palace, it's like we had just drilled it, right? So she had just drilled it. So yun, parang imagine telling our large group of people in ABS then, Noel, that we're gonna drill you getting thrown out or
Yeah.
you getting harassed or getting shut down, right? We're gonna drill this, and that's kind of what we had to do. And then I think the other part is, uh, well, like we did things like early on when the first cases began. I actually had a general assembly, and I told everyone, everybody will have different risk appetite, like what you and your family are comfortable with. And I said, we won't take it against anybody if you would like to leave. And actually, you have to give people the option out, right? Like, if you want to leave, we will, talk to us and we'll write you a recommendation. In fact, at that point, I was thinking I could even recommend some of them to go to ABS. It's so, yun. And the best part, no one from editorial left. No one from editorial took. So yun, parang, I guess I have to always look at the silver lining. Because there always is, there always is a silver lining. And gain hope from that and try to learn what it's teaching you.
And go back to the purpose. No, we all have the same purpose. So we're joined by the other anchors here in Radio Katipunan celebrating your birthday too. So Brother Ed Colmenares from Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan is here. Shoot your next question, brother.
Sorry, my question seems a little bit more serious. And we know elections are coming in 2 years. Hopefully, a no Noel scenario will not happen. But and we're concerned. I know that Rappler is very much committed to providing good quality facts, research, and news to people. But my question always has been, how do you plan to expand your reach to go beyond the usual echo chambers that Rappler is being listened to? Because I at least a part of me still thinks that with good and proper information, we can form the decision of the people who will be casting their votes on 2022.
So, and I think, Brother Ed, I know who we are and we know who we're not, right? Like, we're not ABS-CBN in the sense of a masa. Hindi kami masa. In the sense of our audiences, right? I mean, I think there are some of our editorials are now written in Filipino, but we're a very small group. We're 100 people. Look at the difference when I shifted from managing ABS-CBN to Rappler. 1,000 journalists in ABS-CBN minimum, right? But sometimes more. And then at our highest, 100 people. And only about 25 are journalists because Rappler is tech, it has graphics. So it's 1/10 of them. I guess let me answer the core of your question, which is how do we get the facts to people for election day? And that isn't a Rappler problem. In fact, I would say it's a societal problem. It's a Filipino problem since we spend the most time for the 5th year running on social media globally. And the biggest problem that I see is that social media, Facebook in particular, because 100% of Filipinos on the internet are on Facebook. Facebook really is our internet. And, part of the reason all of the things that have happened here are connected to the rest of the world is because we are a testing ground for these tactics of mass manipulation. So the problem we have is that the largest distributor of news, Facebook, is essentially a behavior modification system, right? And let me explain that. Each of us throws in our data with every post that we write on Facebook, and that data is broken down, and machine learning then creates a model. If you watch The Social Dilemma, diba, they create the doll of the guy. So Ben has his model that is being manipulated by the three different, levers behind the scenes. So the model is created. That machine knows you better than you know yourself. And then artificial intelligence pulls it up and takes your moment of vulnerability to a message and sells it, whether that message is to a government or to a company. And then that they nudge you. So you're essentially being manipulated all the time on this, right? And then here's the kicker. Lies laced with anger and hate spread further and faster on social media.
Yes.
That's the way the platform is designed. You know? And then aside from that, it also builds divisiveness into our society. So, think about the difference between 2016 and 2020 in the Philippines. And I'll tell you one tech decision that was done by every social media platform. It's not just Facebook. They grow their platform by using the concept. They recommend to each of us friends of friends. Because A/B testing has shown that if you recommend a friend of a friend, you're more likely to click on it. You're more likely to click on it and ask them to be friends, right? So here's what happened to the Philippines in 2016. In 2016, we were all in the middle. We agreed on the facts, right? But what happened is, as the Facebook recommended, or as YouTube recommended friends of friends, the pro-Duterte people began growing, and they moved further right. And the anti-Duterte people, when they grew their networks, they grew further left. And over time, we grew further apart. We tore apart the public sphere because of the algorithms and the design of the platform. I don't think it's a coincidence that the leaders who do the best on social media are us against them people. They demonize the enemy, which they create enemies and then they demonize them, which is what President Duterte does. It's what President Trump does. I can name a whole bunch of kind of digital authoritarians, populist leaders who use social media. And so us against them is a terrorist tactic. It tears society apart. And that's what we have to live with. So how do you deal with this come 2022 or come campaigns? This is the biggest problem. So this is what we work on all the time. I mean, Noel, in 2016, Father Nona, you knew this also, we exposed the propaganda machine, and we were attacked because of that. But I think the way we're doing it is by demanding accountability from Facebook. So I'm a member of this global board. It was just launched last night. Last night was the first Zoom call. But Carol Cadwalader, the British journalist who was behind the Cambridge Analytica series, right? She was the one who blew the story open. And then Shoshana Zuboff, she's a Harvard professor who wrote Surveillance Capitalism, and a whole bunch of other people, including a former prime minister. There were 25 of us. They pulled us together and we launched the Real Facebook Oversight Board. And we made 3 demands. They were all based on U.S. elections. Because the idea here is there's a little more than 30 days before U.S. elections. And when you're using a platform like Facebook where lies spread faster, let me shorthand that by saying that Facebook is biased against facts, right? Because if lies laced with anger and hate spread further and faster, then it's biased against facts, which are boring. It's biased against journalists. We tend to be boring. I'm more boring than Noel. It's that's a reality, right?
That's not true. You graduated as a theater and dance student.
I know, and I wasn't very good at it. That's why I became a journalist. No, sorry. No, but it's like, I guess it's biased against facts. So this is a big problem. Without facts, you cannot have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. If you don't have these, you don't have democracy. And then the question I have for U.S. elections right now is, how can you have elections? How can people choose who they're going to vote for if they don't have facts?
Yes.
When you're being manipulated, and they've already proven that Russian disinformation, that the growth of the extreme right, the alt-right, the far right, that these are all connecting globally in some way, and manipulating Americans. These are all documented already. So if that's the case and we're being manipulated without our knowledge, is there free will? Can we choose? How do we debate ideas if we don't have that? Anyway, sorry, I dumped everything all on my tongue.
Yeah. But
So that's brother Ed, I guess my question to you about elections, number one, we need to hold social media platforms accountable.
Sure.
And I think we should begin that now. Because if we don't, it's already been 4 years, right? And then the second is that it's funny. People always ask me, but Maria, everybody is attacking. And the kind of toxicity now on Facebook is painful to watch from Filipinos who I never thought would be like this, right?
That's true.
I think that the thing there is, don't be a monster to fight a monster. Bono said it.
Yeah, I have to go. So happy birthday once again. I have to go. Bye-bye, Noel.
Thank you.
Bye, Father.
So Maria, first the Inquirer, then you and the Rappler, and then ABS-CBN, and then Facebook. It's been a long trend of media suppression and oppression reduced to technicalities. No? So how do you feel about this, and what can be done?
I think you see the same tactic over and over, right?
Yeah.
Because the Constitution guarantees the freedom of expression and the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, all of these things. It's in the Bill of Rights. But what we are seeing is death by 1,000 cuts. Because it's actually targeting specific people to show you what will happen to you if you speak, right? So that's kind of the game of the administration. And I guess that's the reason I don't stop speaking, because it's an intimidation tactic. I mean, look, I think Senator De Lima has had it the worst. She's attacked the worst on social media. She has been put in prison. It's more than 3 years that she's been in prison without really a proper trial. And I think the problem that I have is we have allowed it to happen. And speaking as a journalist, I think at that point in time, it happened so early that I actually gave the government the benefit of the doubt. Because I was like, well, maybe the government wouldn't do all of these things.
That's true.
If they didn't really have evidence, I gave the government the benefit of the doubt. It's very hard for me to stick to that now because I know me. Right?
Yeah.
I know what the government violated my rights. So, I know the abuse of power first. So then I look back at Laila De Lima and I think, what are we doing? Have we failed? I guess that's the other part, Noel. It's like we have to think that an attack on one is an attack on all. I say that about journalism. I think that's about protecting the rights of citizens in a democracy. If one
but they didn't close Inquirer, but it's suffering from the loss of advertisers. Then Rappler, a lot of cases, and including yours, no? And then with ABS, this is the first time we'll talk about this. Did you imagine that it was our former organization was closed down? Did you expect that at all?
I'm kind of sad to say yes, in the sense that it is a sign of power, right? So the first is what happened during the pandemic is a complete consolidation of power. The shutdown of ABS-CBN would not have been possible if we didn't have of coronavirus.
Yes.
If
Yes.
we weren't stuck in our homes, we all would have gone out.
Okay. Yes.
That would never have happened, Noel. The stars would
It
have.
was a tipping point, no? We thought it was a tipping point. But did you think, well, ABS did enough in trying to fight for their rights?
Siguro dapat tanong ka. Diba? No, let me, I will say, you mentioned something earlier about the Inquirer and
Yes.
the advertisers. Rappler lost advertisers as well, right? If you think about it, January 2018, when the cases came against us, by April, we dropped 49% of our advertising.
Wow.
We were forced to pivot to find a new sustainable business model, and went to our community to ask for help, right? So I think that's the first, is that you have to be transparent about what you're going through.
Yeah.
And I don't know if ABS did that. That's kind of, I'm backing into your question, because I know my former colleagues, I know my former boss, right?
Yes.
And I felt that, I think the difference is that in dealing with things like this, you're forced to figure out how you're going to fight. Fight frontally, or are you going to negotiate? Are you, I guess these are all things. And the difference when you have a big company like the SCBN is that negotiation should work. ABS didn't do anything wrong. The franchise should have been renewed, and everything that was thrown during these extended periods are, again, like social media, a distraction.
Yes. No, I saw kasi the interview with Sheila Coronel, and she said, no, parang ABS could have done more than equate the whole thing to just a humanitarian issue. Kasi it became an emotional issue of the how many thousands of people losing jobs, when it was really a point against, well, the consequences of losing a channel of truth or real journalism instead. So parang it wasn't only a humanitarian reason, but it was a fight for the truth, fight for democracy. But it wasn't like, it really wasn't underscored.
You should say that. So you, when you ask me that, I'm the former head of news of ABS.
Yes.
I know the levers and the balance that the managers would have been going through. I think maybe they may not have taken the problem as, no, I know they took the problem seriously, right? But these are choices that you make. The same way that, like, for everyone in this call, like, how vocal are you going to be about your rights? What if you're threatened? What if you stand to lose a lot?
True.
What if you stand to go to jail? These are all things. It goes back to every person has a different risk assessment. Having said that, ABS-CBN, the shutdown of ABS-CBN, opened, there's a huge tear in the cultural ecosystem. Yes, it is a freedom of the press issue. I mean, to not say that, to pretend that that's not the case, is disingenuous. And our spokesman for the palace says that all the time. Says it about me. Maria makes this a freedom of the press issue. Now, well, even if ABS-CBN said that, they would get the same response from the palace that I've gotten. But, it way of saying that I think these are judgment calls that we had never thought we would be forced to make. And we don't know what will work. And, I think Rappler is lucky in the sense that we're poor. We have no other businesses. We have nothing to protect.
It's a good point, no? It's different when you talk about journalists and media owners, because media owners would have other interests, no? So Rappler is just journalism.
And to do well and to keep doing journalism and making money. I the first time we made money was 2019 when I was arrested a few times. so Yun. I guess, Noel, let me ask you, what would you have wanted ABS-CBN?
I would have wanted Cardo to have organized something before that happened. Di ba? Parang, uy, mawawala probinsyano. Anong reaction nyo earlier on? But well, the pandemic was just something that hindered us from organizing. Yun yung problema. But then, parang people should see beyond the loss of jobs for the 11,000 people. Di ba? Parang it was something more that we lost actually during that process.
Right now we kind of see this in our data, like the lack of the star magic. I mean, things but there is a tear in our cultural fabric right now. It's very strange because ABS does reach places in the Philippines that we haven't had, and there's a lot of ripple effects. So it shut down. I mean, aside from the money, the advertising industry, and the stars and the journalists who have been laid off, there's a lot more. It will be easier to manipulate Filipinos, right? Because no matter what you say about ABS-CBN, courage is built into the fabric. And I think that I was waiting for the journalists to be let loose.
That's true. And then we'll talk about fear and caution now amongst journalists. No? But Lester here has some questions. He's from the Jesuit Music Ministry, but had that question, a question on Facebook and how to deal with it. Go, Lester.
Hi, Miss Ressa. A few weeks ago, or a few days ago, the president was throwing some comments about Facebook because Facebook has shut down a number of advocacy pages of the government. So there are a couple of scenarios that can happen. So number one, maybe they will restrict Facebook access in the Philippines. Number two, what if Facebook, would not act on those advocacy pages in the future because it's a chilling effect that the government is saying something about them. And then I guess number three is since Rappler has been operating as a news platform online and has operated on Facebook, what do you think will be the impact of it with the comments of the president against Facebook?
And with Filipinos really heavily on Facebook, Maria, will this have an effect on the popularity of the president?
Oh, wow. That's almost wishful thinking, Noel. No, I think the first is, what was the takedown? So there were two, I call them influence operations or information operations, meaning they are attempting to manipulate, and they are fake accounts or use fake identities, right? So one was from China. It was from Fujian province, and it was seeding. It first targeted Taiwan, then Indonesia, and it was most successful in the Philippines. In the Philippines, it supported President Duterte, Amy Marcos, and Sara Duterte. It attacked me and Rappler and seeded pro-Chinese Navy propaganda. Right? So it also used AI, fake photos. And then the last thing it did was it began to make fake accounts for U.S. elections. Okay, the second information operations or influence operations was here in the Philippines. It was Filipino, and it was the police and the military. This is a network that we had done a few stories on because it was red tagging. It was it was inciting hate against people like Sara Elago. It was trying to paint activists as terrorists. And here's the part that isn't as clear. When Facebook said that it is based on behavior, it's not about the content they post. It's about the people behind it. So that advocacy page, in quotes, advocacy page, hands off our children, one of its administrators was a military captain. And they named two other soldiers, but they were hiding their identity, and they were trying to manipulate. That advocacy page was um, was seeding propaganda, pretending to just be from parents. And again, these are tactics that are used by groups outside the Philippines, like QAnon, the alt-right, and it's insidious manipulation. It's fitting that the soldier who was founded, he's a captain, was part of civil military operations. Meaning, in the old days, I would say in the late 80s, we would call that psyops. And now with social media, civil military operations online is a whole different ballgame. And I think one of the things that's clear is that in Facebook's case, because they own the platform, this goes against their rules. And that's what they were taking down. As whether or not what impact this would have on Facebook, I don't think it would have much of an impact on Facebook because it's evidence-based. It's not emotion. It's not, the evidence is very clear. You can look at it in the data, and they haven't gone that far, but you can go to Graphica and to DFR Lab, who were given the data, and they analyzed the data. So you can see they named the 3 soldiers, right? And there are more. In our investigation in Rappler, those were just anonymous data. So we knew the soldiers hid their identity. And it was actually Facebook that found them. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't see that Facebook would retreat. And it depends on the government. I also don't see the government wanting to lose this huge power and capacity that they built on Facebook. Because, I guess the irony of it is that Facebook, which has allowed all the attacks against journalists and human rights activists, is itself now being attacked.
Yes.
So it's really a slippery slope, and I guess that's why it goes back to accountability. There has to be greater transparency. We cannot be manipulated. We should not be manipulated. And the government itself has said they have standards. The military originally denied that they were part of it, and then the president's message actually implicitly said that they are, right? So these are all questions, and I guess the last part is bullying works to a point, and then at a certain point, I hope people stand up for our rights, because if we don't, then the few people who do stand up will collapse. I mean, again, here's another ironic statement: let 1,000 flowers bloom. Who said that?
No, but here, Maria, again, it's a funny question, but then so many people are hooked on Facebook. But how will this affect the popularity of the president? There has been no survey done yet during this pandemic, but has his popularity eroded? Have people become more critical?
This is a chicken or egg question, Noel, because the information operations on Facebook, right, they have been going on since 2016. And, when you say a million times, President Duterte is amazing, fantastic, the best president we've ever had, when you rewrite history for the Marcoses and say the same thing about former President Marcos, it has an effect. And so real people, so think about this, when Facebook uses CIB, Coordinated Inauthentic Behavior. What was CIB in 2016 has now affected real people who now believe that Marcos was a great president and isn't corrupt and didn't steal $10 billion. It's changed the way people think. So, sorry, to your question there is, the influence operations where a lot of money has been poured into Facebook to do this has buoyed up the popularity. I believe that's what our data shows us. And we have done lots of stories on this. And then what happens? You have a statistical survey group coming in and asking Filipinos in their home where they know where they live, they know they have their numbers, and it's an atmosphere of fear, violent. Would people really, aside from being convinced on social media, the bandwagon effect, there's also fear. So these are the reasons why, like, people always tell me, yeah, but maybe he's really popular. And I go back and really look at the numbers. When
Yeah.
you look at the numbers and you look at the role of social media, and then you add violence and fear, how realistic are the numbers? Because when I ask Pulse Asia and SWS, I ask them how they account, how do they balance fear?
Mm-hmm.
How do they balance that? And I don't think they ever really do. They stick to a methodology that worked in an open society, but I'm not so sure works in our society today.
That's true. Here's someone who's fearless, someone from the Facebook generation. Cholo from Pop Talk.
Hi, Cholo.
Hi, Miss Maria. Happy birthday. And before everything, I watched Death of a Thousand Cuts and I've been following you. Thank you for being an inspiration to all of us young people and holding the line. And one of my friends actually worked on your fan cam, birthday fan cam. So super funny. That was a really great video as well. But my question, I guess, in relation to the other things we were talking about earlier, how do we encourage Filipinos, of course, being in this online generation, to be more vigilant, especially that now that we know the things that, for example, the social dilemma has presented to us, and now that you're trying to make Facebook and all other social media accountable, how do we embrace this double-edged sword of being in social media, of course, because we rely on it so much, but we also know the perils of it. So how do you, how can we, of course, with Rappler and with all the other journalists, approach this from this standpoint? Yeah.
No, it's a great question. I'm going to give you 3 steps, I think. Right?
Parang sweet and nag-homily points, no?
No, because I think the first part is understand how you are affected by the medium you're using. You know, in the past, television is far more manipulative, and I say that in a nothing like social media, but it was far more emotional than print. That's why I did television, because at least there's still a craft and a profession when you produce for a television screen. But now with social media, the tactics of addiction to slot machines, they're built into the design. So when you actually go on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, there's a reward punishment method in there that keeps you coming back. It's mildly addictive, and when you're on it, you actually have increased levels of dopamine. You have increased levels of oxytocin, which is the love hormone. You feel, even though there's a great book by Sherry Turkle that talks about being alone together. Because in the end, as we move forward from the time when we felt good in social media, now we feel the haves versus the have-nots, right? There's that. So the first is, please understand the medium. And there's a great book that just came out June 15th. It's called The Hype Machine. It's an MIT professor named Senatorial wrote it, and that's 20 years of experience in coding, in tech, in engineering. And then he goes into neuroscience to show you how it plays with our brains and our emotions. So that's the first understanding. Social dilemma, you talks about it in a different way. I think the second is understand that facts are in danger, that we have different sets of facts now for a polarized society, and that was done on purpose. Because when you don't trust, so what's the end goal of all of the activity on social media that is pro-government or state-sponsored? The end goal is not just to make you think President Duterte is amazing, or and the messaging right now in the pandemic is no one has ever dealt with anything like this. Tatay is so tired, you know. So despite all of that, right, the problem there is the end goal is not to just make you believe that one idea. The end goal is to make you distrust everything. That's Russian disinformation tactic, right? So if that's the case, if it's chaotic and you don't know, and you're just afraid, the voice with the loudest megaphone wins. That's President Duterte again, with the administration. So understand that facts, I'm sorry, I think that's who I will try to stop it. Facts are really boring on social media. It doesn't spread as far as fast. And then the third part is because of these two, because of the first two, you have to actively organize. You have to organize your friends, your family. You have to, I guess the question I was forced to ask myself a few years back, 3 years back, was, you know, um, what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? Each of us, if each of us asks ourselves that question, then we begin to work because we're going to have to sacrifice something for the truth in today's day and age. And if you do that, then civil society, right? Look, the problem with civil society right now is how can they act? How can they hold government to account? How can they tell you about climate change if the facts aren't getting to you? So that's why in the end you go back to our physical communities, to the people we trust. Before that trust is torn apart, right? That's part of what social media tries to do. So those three, right, which is, hold the platforms to account, understand what they do to you. The second is, I guess, in terms of facts, support the journalists, support the people. You become a truth teller. Let's take it beyond journalism. Support the truth tellers. I hope radyo-katipunan is doing that, right? And then the third part is organize. You have to organize your communities. And that, Brother Ed, is also part of the answer to your question about our elections. If we aren't organized, if we think someone else will do it for us, I'm not sure our democracy will survive.
But before Maxine asks her questions, Maria, do you feel that the press, the journalists now, are more fearful or bordering on caution? And there's so much self-censorship going on, and people are saying it's the worst kind of censorship when you self-censor. Well, aside from Rappler, what can you name as parang a major establishment that's kind of brave and courageous in fighting for the truth at this point?
Noel, I think there are a lot of reporters who want to do the stories, who continue to do the stories, and I think that oftentimes there's a balancing act among managers and owners.
That's true.
So, it's hard. Noel, I can't. Our peers have to come together because we know it, we see it.
Yes.
And me saying that we are or aren't doesn't help. But I do think that we all know what's at stake. And here's an anecdote from 1986. When I first came to the Philippines on this, I was on a Fulbright and I walked into the government station and Point Makaraig was the anchor then.
Yes.
And she was a friend from like third grade and the only one of the people I remembered, right? Isn't that funny? Anyway, I was a director for the newscast in Channel 4, and one of the things I watched were older people unlearning self-censorship. It is a tough one, but if the environment demands it, then it goes back to the individual risk appetite of every person who writes. And I guess that's where I put my faith back in Filipinos. I think we have fearless journalists. I think we have reporters who want to tell the story. I think the problem is, how do we get it to you?
It's true.
Well, the distribution platform is biased against journalism.
That's true. But Maria, in a sense, do you feel there's an effect, or at least the public opinion is shifting, lalo na now with the inept handling of the pandemic?
Chicken or the egg again, Noel, because right now we're in our 28th week of the lockdown, right? Yesterday, this is day 201.
Actually, 202 if we start on that Saturday, no? Before that,
Correct, right? And so we haven't really stepped outside, and the world that we knew is gone. And I think we have to first accept that, right? So I don't know what will happen next, in the sense of how far how far will power go? That's one. We've
Mhm.
seen this, right? So something that's shocking to me, that the
Mhm.
ombudsman, whose job it is to put forward greater transparency and hold
Yeah.
officials account, is the one who says you are not going to get the sal ends of
Yeah.
public officials, so that we no longer can do lifestyle checks, right? It's upside down. The world is really upside down, and I think I kind of I've said this frequently now, like the people who are elected because of social media, the people who do well there, the candidates who do well, incite us against them. Right? President Trump is very similar to that. He uses this kind of language that
That's true.
incites hate in some way. And when they get elected, they then take the power that is given to them in a democracy, the
Mhm.
levers of a democracy, and
Mhm.
turn it against democracy.
That's
And
true.
that's kind of what we're seeing now. So sorry, Noel, your question again was,
Well, is it making a dent now on popular opinion?
ah, oh, well, so I said the chicken or the egg, right? Popular opinion is very fickle. It's
Ah,
extremely fickle. I think that the time when we saw the most unhappiness with the administration, hashtag oust Duterte now, and then it became hashtag oust Duterte. Remember?
now
On
Paalam Duterte, remember this week?
sorry.
Paalam Duterte, hashtag Paalam Duterte this week, no?
But the one that was really at the peak that had the most was oust Duterte now, and that was around April 1 when President Duterte told the police to. Remember, he said told Filipinos stay at home or else, and then he told the police shoot them dead. That's a direct quote. That's
Yeah.
the night we had like 500,000 tweets trending. The problem is that ABS-CBN is already shut down,
Yeah.
and nothing has really happened. We've normalized this, and so is it enough? Where's our political leadership? Where's the
That's
opposition?
true also, yeah.
What exactly? Uh, what is the vision of what the Philippines is going to be, to become? What kind of Philippines do we want? Right?
Mhm.
It's not. I should ask you, because I would like to have a Philippines that has my values.
Yes, correct. Speaking of shared values, we have this woman in the team, the youngest actually in radyo-katipunan team. Max, shoot your questions.
Hi, Miss Maria. First of all, I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I'm going to start with actually a very light question. So, I read an interview you were part of where you said, my heroes were always a combination of Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. You have to be ruled by logic, but if you're only ruled by logic and you don't touch your emotions, you will make the wrong instinctive call. So, me as a movie geek, I really like that quote from you. And now I just want to ask you, living in the world we live in now, how do we find that middle ground between logic and emotion?
It's a tough one because, and I think partly social media again, right? You can see, I think it's the root of so many changes that we are just understanding, right? Social media is a thinking fast. Daniel Kahneman wrote this book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, about the systems of thinking of human beings. And thinking fast is emotional, it's instinctive. It is, when we were cavemen, that's how we survived. Thinking slow is rational. So Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, right? Um, the problem is that social media prioritizes thinking fast. It rewards thinking fast. It rewards anger. It rewards hate. Um, and what I've seen in the younger generation, sometimes I think Max even younger than you, because Rappler's median age is 20
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
old. And there's a generation gap, I would say, between the millennials and like my
Mhm.
um, and there's the thing of emotions above all, that this is your truth, right? If you can tap your emotions. In fact, in ABS-CBN, di ba, Noel? Bubog. So, the problem that I see with that is taken to an extreme, it is very self-indulgent. It doesn't allow us to build. And we need to build our society, and normalizing this kind of um, the emotions, this kind of hype up emotion, and putting emotion always at the top also means that we're not thinking enough. Which, look, I have my problems sometimes with entertainment. And Noel knows this because I will say, "Pwede ba? Can we add something in?" Like when I took over TV Patrol, for example. Right?
Insight. You were telling us more insight. Ayoko ng chismis. Yeah.
Goes against ratings, and that is it, right? So this is the problem with social media. You can feed a kid sugar all the time, but that kid will get diabetes,
That's
right?
true.
So
Yes.
you have to. So I guess that's what I worry about. That if we don't put rationality, if we don't put evidence-based thinking, we will make the wrong calls in a pandemic.
Yes.
We will have the wrong values in place, i.e., patronage, versus let the best person who let the person who knows how to do the job do it, right? Merit versus patronage. So I think we have to find the balance. You tell me, Max. I mean, like, this is a debate we have with our team all the time, but Rappler is also different because we work really hard, and our millennials work really hard. Like
Yes.
12-hour days are norm. And this is still from when I was with Probe. And my generation always was that, if you don't feel good right now, you hold it in and you punch through it. And that's a different way than what social media allows you to do. I guess the last part that I'll say about emotions in social media is that in many ways, social media allows you to unleash your worst
That's true.
and
That's right.
rewards you for unleashing your worst. And President Duterte has given permission to Filipinos to be really nasty to each other and denigrating to women, right? Women are attacked at least 10 times more than men on social media in the Philippines today. So I worry about the values of your generation. I worry about the values of the future. So it's personal, and it's also the values of democracy. That makes sense. I don't know if I answered your question. I think my answer is that we always will need both, and it becomes more of a challenge today because not only are we living through a once in a century pandemic where we're stuck at home, we're afraid of losing our jobs, we're afraid of catching a virus, right? We live in an environment of fear, but the very platforms that deliver us news and connectivity play on our fears and our anger.
Grabe. Well,
That's right.
talking about women, you have more women questions, di ba, Max? Sabi niya,
Yeah.
yung Rappler daw is really composed more, or the leaders are really women, and now the women leaders are the ones doing well in the pandemic, Maria.
I think that's left brain, right brain again. It's Captain Kirk and talked about. Kasi look, like again, I forgot to say this in that thing. Like the part that is missing in our societies now is empathy. Empathy, right? Like compassion. Because this is what we should be encouraging in each other. So I think women know how to do that. I think, if you talk to Rapplers, they'll probably tell you, because we're also disciplinarians, we're strict. But it wasn't by design. I mean, this is when we were coming up, when we left ABS-CBN, we were all, Glenda used to manage ANC, Beth was managing all the newscasts, Chai was head of standards and ethics, and I was head of news, right? I mean, and then we took several other guys. Thank God Gabby wasn't mad at me. At least I paalam. But yun, parang we were old enough to realize that we didn't know what we didn't know. And that's the other part. I hope your generation, Max, you don't know what you don't know until it's too late.
That's true.
That's so true. That's so relatable.
Ang tinuro mo sa akin, Maria, trust those people na walang ibang interes. Di ba? So, parang you ask the advice of people who don't have a say or don't have anything at stake. So that's it. Go, Max.
Interesting. So, okay, I guess a more personal question. This is actually pulled up from Instagram. But what's next for you? Like, are you looking? This is from Jepiner5, by the way. He asked, is she looking forward to settling down with her own family? And what is your favorite thing to do when there's no work?
So I think on the family, right? Like when I was maybe turning 30, there's a period of time when you will decide whether you are going to have children or not. I'm way beyond that. I turned 57 today. You know? I'm old. Like I said, by next year I'll have been a journalist for 35 years. I bet that's older than you now. Is it? Are you 30? Yeah, I will.
Oh, baby.
See? So, I think that, I guess, here's the last anecdote I'll say. I couldn't keep a cactus alive in my apartment when I was working for CNN. So, I suppose you could say that, like Probe and Rappler, that these are my babies. And my family, I've grown close. Our family's grown closer as we've gotten older. But we're also all over the world. Another part that I've always lived with. My family was never all together in the same place. I don't have kids, although I guess Rappler is a kid. We're 8. We're turning 9 next year. Wow. And then settling down. What's next? I don't know. I mean, here's the other part. I used to say that 10, 20, 30s, 40s, 50s. I actually pegged what each decade was for you. So your 10, of course, you're growing and you're with your family. 20s are exploration. 30s, 20s is when you're learning what you're going to do. 30s, exploration. Yan. 40s, you make a choice and you're master of the universe. And 50s to me was reinvention. 50s was Rappler for me, right? And then 60s, wala pa ako doon. Pero, tingnan natin kung ano siya. But I think the only thing I will say is what keeps me excited is learning. So whatever choice you have to make, you make the choice to learn. I didn't really answer your question because I'm not sure what's next. Because then here's what's so interesting to me. I have spent my life both local and global. And the problems that we're facing with Facebook, think about it like this, right? President Duterte has gained more power, not just because of what he's done, but also because of what Silicon Valley has done. So local is global and global is local. So the world has never been as connected as it is today. And that's kind of fascinating. That's a whole other challenge for me because we have to fight the same battles, whether it's in the Philippines or anywhere else around the world.
Or teach again, Maria. Do you see yourself teaching again?
I feel like we teach all the time because that's exactly what Rappler is, right? Like I think the other part that's
or write more books.
Definitely.
Yes.
Daming pwedeng
because you've been asking daw Tina Monzon Palma to finish her book. One of my idols again. You've been prodding her to finish her book. So ikaw din yata you're due to write a book with all these learnings.
I wanted to write about Rappler, but it's already passed. Now it's really, how will democracy survive or die? How a democracy dies. That's what we're living right now. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating. We all play a part in this.
We'll have our station manager ask his question. Justin, ayan na. Ang kanang kamay ni Father Nono.
Hi, Miss Maria. Nice to see you here, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Well, to begin with, of course, we look up to you as our source of hope and courage. Despite all these things that's happening right now. In fact, today we are actually celebrating World College Radio Day. So it's very timely your presence here with us. Now, we just wanted to get your insight on how significant college radio is, or or what's the significance of college radio? Do you think would be for during this time? And also, on a more personal thing, or it's more of how do you actually put yourself intact despite all these things that that you're experiencing with the cases and all. And lastly, just one tip for a workaholic like you, I suppose.
Working on our birthday, huh?
Yes.
This isn't work. This is fun.
Thank you.
No. No. I guess, and that's the other part. What people will call work. It's not work yet.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
fun, and I guess that's the other part. Like what we try to do in Rappler is we take what you want to do, and then we walk down that path together because it's what the organization needs.
Yeah.
So your question on college radio. So I think
Or journalism, I guess, no? College journalism.
so look, I hope you're taking what you do on air and putting them as podcasts or putting them online, right? Because I will say that one of the good things about the spoken word, about what you hear, is that it is very difficult. It's one of the few content that we create that isn't torn apart by social media. So and I'll explain that because right now when you read a piece and it's torn apart into 4 sentences and then it's shared on social media, the context of those 4 sentences are not determined by the reporter. They're determined by the algorithm of the social media, and it depends on the news feed that you have, which is personalized to each of us, right? So we don't see the same thing. Our contexts are different. Radio and podcasts are the last things that hold their content because your voice, if you're listening to it on SoundCloud or on Spotify, you're able to you're creating the context. I think it's your college radio does the exact same thing that we're trying to do, which is to build community. You are building a community, and that's critically important. Your community is young, trying to figure out who they are, trying to figure out how they fit in the world we live in. What does the world we live in demand? How can they change the world we live in? And these are all at a time when the world we live in demands action from college students also, right? So, and again, very unique time period because the pandemic is once in a century. I mean, once in a century I guess this is, Fauci said this, right? This is the worst. It's a public health crisis that happens once in a century. So that's one. The second question that you had is, I think it's more, I've been asked this a lot. How do you handle fear? Are you afraid? Yes, of course. And I'll tell you, I remember when it dawned on me. It was April 2019. And it was actually, I was in New York in a panel about the launch of Trial Watch, which is the Amal and George Clooney's foundation. They had asked me to come launch this, and I was sitting on a panel. My right was a journalist who had been jailed he was an Al Jazeera journalist, Mohammed Fahmy. He had been jailed in Egypt for 300 some odd days. And then on my left was Jason Rezaian, the Iranian American, who was jailed in Iran for 544 days. And I realized that I was the only one who was free, was still free. Didn't have to deal with this, right? And I thought, oh my God, I better, what if I do go to jail? Because I can't keep speaking the way I speak without having confronted the fear. So here's my, and this is kind of like a lesson I've learned all throughout, starting with when my family moved to the States and everyone was bigger, taller, spoke faster. I mean, when my family left, our language is Tagalog. I spoke Tagalog. I didn't speak English very well, in fact. So, and the advice I gave is the same that I live with now, which is whatever you're most afraid of, touch it. And then you have to hold it, you have to embrace your fear. And in your head, imagine it and take the sting out of that fear so that it robs the fear of its power over you. Uh, it took me like the fear of jail. Look, I still grapple with it because it is
Mhm.
a possibility, right?
Mhm.
But it took me like 2 to 3 months, and it was actually Amal who, at that point, it was so George Clooney, by the way, made coffee for me on an espresso machine. But that was when they were the ones who said, what are you doing? And that was really when it began to hit me that this isn't the Philippines I knew, and
Mhm.
I have to like it. So that's how I handle it. Embrace your fear, rob it of its sting, and then expect the best, hope for the best. I guess that's hope for the best, but expect the worst. Be ready for the worst. That's a
Mhm.
really schizophrenic way of living, but that's the way I'm living right now because you have to hope for the best. I have to hope for the best of. I have to hope that Filipinos are still basically good, that
Mhm.
our justice system, that there are judges who are touching my cases that will live with the spirit of the law. Right? So that's the second question that you have. What's the third one? The third question was about. Uh, so I just wrote, how do you deal with your? What's the last part of your question?
No, what's just a tip for workaholics?
I workaholics. Yes, yes. I mean, I guess so. Maybe it's generational because because I also love 10,000 hours. That was Malcolm Gladwell who wrote that
Mhm.
you can't be good at something until you put in 10,000 hours. And technology has made me have to relearn the world. That's part of why I find it so weirdly exciting, you know.
Yeah.
And when you're under attack the way we are, you get to see all the tactical changes of how the social media machine attacks you, how the propaganda machine attacks you first, and then I can research. I can look at the data after. So I guess it depends on what you mean by workaholic. So why don't I turn that around this way and say and suggest that you find your passion. You
That's true.
know, and somebody used to say, finding your passion is the wrong advice.
Mhm.
Uh, because how can you make money when you find your passion? Look, uh, no one is making any money in a pandemic right now.
That's true.
Our
That-
economy is going to tank, and I don't think the government has given us the right numbers yet. We won't know until we do. But you have to. How do you deal with this? You, you build. You build,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
build on what you love. You have
Yeah. So something you taught us nga, not money but integrity. Really. So, Max, has may pahabol na question from a viewer? Yeah, go. Oh, you're muted. Okay, go.
Sorry, there. So this question is from Cholo Malilin, one of our RK anchors. He's asking, what did you think about the documentary A Thousand Cuts, and did it achieve its purpose?
depends on what version you saw. There are two now, right? The one that was shown in
Version
the
of
States.
Maria.
Huh?
There be an updated version.
There's the one that's being shown in the States and is rolling out, I think, in Asia and Europe soon. Um,
Oh,
it is about 20 minutes shorter.
a
Um,
short.
Oh,
yeah, it's the one that was shown here on Independence Day on June 12th is about 20 minutes longer.
I like that scene when you were with your mom. Was it your mom and yun? Basta your family. Tapos noon, you were packing your bag. You see, then painting the scenario. Sabi ko, huy, at least Maria in her vulnerability. Kasi bihira nakikita ng mga tao yon, di ba?
You
Pero
know,
nga
my family,
nakakahawa.
but Noel, my family tells me I'm a robot because I have a very emotional family. That's the other part, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I have an emotional family, and so the way I also grew up was to not be emotional, was to be Mr. Spock. And then I realized if you don't touch your emotions, then you're emotionally retarded. That's not a good thing. Oops, I couldn't even use that word, right? So many things have changed. But hi, how do I say that? I guess A Thousand Cuts was I knew that we were living through something very different, and I wanted it documented. It's different when it's Rappler documenting ourselves. We take a lot of things for granted. Ramona Diaz, her cinema verite style, she captures everything, and that's for posterity's sake. The film itself, when we saw it at Sundance, so they brought the four founders, Tia and Rambo. Tia Renada, who was our palace reporter, and then Rambo Tabapa. We all went to Sundance, one of the last times we traveled. And when we were in the theater and everybody was watching, we could feel their emotions. It was shocking because it's even though we lived through it, you having it all pulled together like that makes you just go, ugh, it's like a punch in the gut. It makes you realize now they updated the film with the verdict, the June 5th verdict. So ends like the one you saw had the ending of us. I told Rappler, so it's like we have to go back. Like hate is coursing through social media, but I don't think that's normal. You can't build with hate. You destroy with hate. You build with love, and that was how that was what Ramona captured at the end. Now it ends with the verdict of guilty and the press conference where we were wearing masks, and I talked about how we need to fight for our rights. So it's a different film in that sense because, I mean, if I was from the outside looking in, I would be going, "Why is that person foolish?" Foolish, diba? Because you can see where this is headed, but I guess I think that it's not a fait accompli, and what I do now will help shape the future I personally will have. And since there's so much at stake for Rappler and for our nation, it's a good battle, right? So anyway, that my answer is it's really unnerving to have a camera follow you all around. Very unnerving to watch yourself. I prefer being the person producing and directing.
Yeah. Anything, Max? You're done?
One more actually. This is from the students. They just want to know that us as students, we look up to journalists and we look up to people who are brave to speak about what they believe in and for what's right for all of us. So as students, a lot of people want to know how can we or what can we do to help protect the journalism community?
First, thank you for asking that question. I think the first is work with us, help us. You don't have to write the stories, but evidence-based reasoning is going away really quickly. Build your communities that protect facts. Talk to your family and friends. How do we fight a propaganda machine? We will have to actually come together. And news organizations in the Philippines aren't very good at working with each other because we grew up in competition with each other. And I've been saying this since 2015, diba? In fact, I think you'll find Rappler retweets every news group because what we've seen in our information ecosystem on Facebook is that the news groups have been pushed to the periphery because we're not working together well enough, and the disinformation networks have taken over the center. That's good. So the first is please don't be part of the problem. That's the first. The facts, spread the facts, know who you are. Try to define. This is an age where you're going to determine who you are. What are the values you stand for? And I say this all the time, like this is the age when you will draw the line. You'll draw the line where here's the line, and on this side you're good, this side you're evil. This is the time when you will create who you are. What's your identity? What do you stand for? And sometimes we don't know. Like when I graduated, I didn't know because I was a bookworm. And you grow your way into the answer, right? So that's the second is what values do you stand for? And then the last part, I ask that question, what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth?
That's
The battle for truth now. And when you have that, what you're willing to sacrifice, go out and do it. Work with the journalists. We need your help. The other reason we need your help is because you bring fresh energy, you bring youth. You know, part of Rapper's secret is when the oldies like me get really tired, our young ones are inspiration. And that's it. This is going to be your battle. We will like work. Unfortunately, we kind of wrecked it. You know, my generation didn't. Diba? Imagine we're right back where we were. Diba?
That's true.
Something wrong.
No, but same principles, no? So, Maria, thank you very much for
Thank
spending
you.
1 hour of your birthday here. Would like, mahirapan na kami to ask you again, but then, can you like pitch in a plug for Radyo Katipunan na how important is keeping a radio like this, a radio network like this? Well, what do you think is the importance of it? Yeah, go.
Of course. Look, Radyo Katipunan builds a community around the voice of the people. You have to ask the questions. You have to listen to each other. You have to form who you are together. You can't do that on social media. So listen, build, and grow.
Ang ganda naman nun.
Well said.
Natuto ako sa iyo, Noel!
Sabi ko nga, Maria, sinasabi yung integrity number one, and always sabi niya, hindi tayo yayaman dito, Noel. In the end, you ask yourself, yung walang bayad yung integrity, no? And then the commitment, sabi niya, you'll survive in this business with two things. Sabi niya, two C's, the competence and commitment. So yan yung pinangahawakan natin. And in the end, yun, kung saan ka magaling, kung saan yung passion mo, sinasabi mo yan palagi, doon ka dapat makilala, doon ka dapat mag-thrive, but in the end, it's not for you. You're doing it not for yourself. So it's all lessons well kept. And so we're kindred spirits. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
At this juncture, I just like to ask or request that because of course our dear Noel, Sir Noel, will also be celebrating his 30th year in media. So we'd like to get also like a few
Maria, thank you very much.
Messages for Sir Noel or anything you'd like to share. Secrets.
Oh, you know the thing about Noel is the spirit. His spirit is it's bubbly from within, comes out and brings out the best. Because again, light, diba? Light and love is still. My God, now I sound so fudgy, but that's actually, you know, at a time when our environment is so full of violence, fear, and hate. What I pulled Noel into this horrendous morning shift, right, where he wakes up at 3 in the morning, and he did it. I think it's that combination. Like he's able to move in many different worlds, and by moving in these different worlds, he connects different types of people. He's what I would call a boundary spanner, and everything that you accomplish happens because of these boundary spanners.
And Maria, I miss our tight hugs. No words, but really tight hugs when we see each other. Thank you very much. Virtual hugs for now. I love you very much and happy birthday. Wherever this fight will lead us, kasama mo kami. Sabi nga, di ba, nakakahawa yung takot, pero nakakahawa rin yung tapang. Maraming salamat for showing us that. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday again.
Birthday. Grabe. Well,
Ateneo, level up! Level up!
Happy victorious 3rd anniversary Radyo Katipunan, and congratulations to my very good friend Noel Ferrer of Level Up for all awards you have been receiving. It's such a great honor and privilege na mag-guest po sa inyong show last year. It was so much fun doing that interview, considering that I was still grieving the loss of my mom and my beloved sister. It's really nice to talk to my good friend, kapatid na Noel. It's always a pleasure. Please take care of yourself and stay safe and healthy. Sa kahit na ano pong gagawin natin, kailangan po tayong mag-level up. Again, thank you very much. Thank you for your service, and God bless you more and more.
Happy 3rd anniversary sa Radyo Katipunan, at syempre, congratulations din kay Sir Noel ng Level Up. Thank you for always sharing the message of hope during these uncertain times, and I pray that you will always be a source of inspiration for your community. Once again, congratulations and happy 3rd anniversary.
Voice of the Blue Eagle, Radyo Katipunan 87.9.
Hello! Ako po si Joey De Leon at ako po ay bumabati sa Radyo Katipunan sa kanilang anibersaryo. Kung nabubuhay lang si Bonifacio, tiyak sasabihin niya, "So good, mga kapatid! So good!" Lalo na ang palatuntunan ni Noel na level up. In English, level up. In Tagalog, kataas-taasang Radyo Katipunan. Congratulations! Tandaan nyo, ang Radyo Katipunan, lalo na ang level up ni Noel. So good, mga kapatid.
The Voice of the Blue Eagle, Radyo Katipunan 87.9.
Sa Radyo Katipunan, happy 3rd anniversary po sa inyo. Thank you for connecting us with one another during these difficult times. At pati kay Sir Noel ng Level Up, congratulations din po sa inyo. Thank you for bringing to us stories of inspiration and stories of excellence. Ako po si Vico Soto na nagsasabing basta't sama-sama tayo, patuloy na umaagos ang pag-asa at patuloy tayong mag-level up.
The Voice of the Blue Eagle, Radyo Katipunan 87.9.
Congratulations for the 3rd year anniversary of Level Up, and congratulations, Noel, for all the awards and recognition you've been receiving for you and your program. And syempre, I'd like to thank you and to congratulate you for having the virtue of always speaking the truth and always standing for what is right and what is good. So again, congratulations, at sana matagal na matagal pang yung programa at ang iyong kontribusyon sa ating industriya. Again, congratulations!
Hi Noel, my friend. Congratulations on the success of your online show, Level Up. 3 years old na, and it continues to reap awards. So friend, continue to serve our people, our industry, and our country. And bilang kaibigan, kung may maitutulong ako, friend, I will always be here, okay? Just a text away. So please keep up the excellent work. Pareho tayo ng advokasya pagdating sa bakuna. Meron lamang kung gustong ibigay na mensahe para sa ating mga kababayan. Okay? Mga kababayan, magpabakuna na po tayong lahat. Ang vaccine po ay para po sa ating kaligtasan at hindi po ito dapat katakutan. Ililigtas po tayo nito sa pandemyang COVID-19. Kaya huwag na po tayong mag-atubili na magpabakuna. Do it for yourself, for your family, for your community, and for our country. Kaya magparehistro na po kayo at siguraduhin po na magpabakuna. Malalagpasan din po natin ang pagsubok na ito. This is Congresswoman Ate V, and may God bless us all. Salamat.
Taon na lang pareho din ang iyong pinaplano. Ngayon mo na kailangan ng totoong pagbabago. Wag mo na kayang palampasin, wag na wag mo na kayang palampasin, wag na wag mo na kayang patagalin, tenanaw mo na gawin mo na.
Okay, sa ating second part ng Level Up, nasa puso po ng ating panauhin yung maglingkod sa bayan. 30 years po siyang nagbibigay ng libreng legal assistance sa mga inaapi at nangangailangan. Siya ay abogado, guro, chairperson ng Free Legal Assistance Group or FLAG, at dekano ng aming katuwang at kasamang universidad, ang De La Salle University's College of Law. Anak siya ng, senator, kilalang senator na nationalist, si Senator Jose Capepe Diokno, na lumaban pa sa demokrasya noong panahon ng martial law. Kaibigan ko po yung anak niya na magaling na filmmaker, si Pepe Diokno. Nandito po si Attorney Chel Diokno, nakasalanan na lang natin kung hindi natin maluklok bilang senador. Maraming salamat po, Attorney Chel. Magandang hapon.
Hello, Noel, at hello sa lahat na nanonood at nakikinig, at thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. We've been waiting for this. And yun, makakasama natin yung mga ibang katuwang natin dito sa Radyo Katipunan dahil napaka-special nyo po. At kakaiba tong parang commitment na rin namin na palabasin yung mabuti, yung tama, yung totoo at matibay at mahusay. Nandito po, hindi natin alam kung personification sila nun, pero oo, si Ariel Dixon po, ng Filipino Departed. Bumati ka, Ariel.
Hello, magandang hapon po mula po sa umagang Good Morning Ateneo. Nakikisama dito sa ating panayam with Noel and Attorney Chel.
Can you shoot the first question, Ariel? Go.
Attorney Chel, nauna talaga ako. Attorney Chel, nagtuturo kasi ako ng literature. No, natuturo ko ng literature dito sa Filipino Department. At bahagi ng pag-unawa namin sa literature ay maiugnay ito sa history at kasaysayan. At ang na-notice ko ay very divided din kahit ang kabataan with how they view a certain part of our history. No, a certain part of our history. And of course, we've heard many times how we as educators feel responsible also on how we do that. But I guess my question is, I recognize first that there is this cultural divide, this ideological divide, maybe of how we understand yung ating nakaraan. So, siguro, Attorney Chel, parang ano ba ang mainam na approach? Paano ba ang pwedeng masabi sa kabataan para makumbinsi sila na paghahanap, na maging mapili sa pagbusisi sa kasaysayan, siguro, na parang nare-revise na nga.
Oo nga, naging guest siya madalas doon sa commemoration ng martial law, no?
Oo.
Pero at ibabalik natin yun, talaga, parang nagkakaroon ng iba't ibang interpretasyon, pero yung blurring ng katotohanan, dapat alam natin kung ano yung totoo.
Yes, oo.
Di ba?
Mm-hmm.
So, Sir Chel, ano po yung stand niyo po yun? Yung revisionism at yung divide na na-create lalo na sa kabataan ngayon?
Well, unang-una, Ariel, nung nabanggit mo yung literature at history, yung connection nila, naalala ko agad yung kay panahon ni Rizal na sinulat niya yung Noli Me Tangere. Kasi that was an exercise of using literature to speak truth to power.
Yeah,
and even more recently, nung panahon ng diktadorya, ay marami din tayong mga manunulat, mga artists, na ginamit nila yung kanilang art to really further the truth. Yung nakakalungkot lang ay mula siguro mga year 2000s, napansin namin na grabe ang paglabas ng mga video, matataas ang production value, halatang pinaggastusan, na talagang iniiba nila ng sadya yung ating kasaysayan pagdating sa batas militar. Ang isa lang nakakalungkot ay meron sa mga kilala ko na mga nabahala nung panahon na yon, we tried to do what we could. But really, there was no big pushback to the kind of historical revisionism that was becoming more and more obvious online. At yun yung naging dahilan, palagay ko, kung bakit maraming mga, hindi naman marami, pero may mga nadala sa mga kabataan natin. Kasi kung makita mo yung mga video na yun, talagang tendency mo, ganun naman pala, nung martial law, okay naman pala siya. Ang talagang challenge natin ngayon is to overcome that kind of fake news. And ang maganda naman ay ngayon, palagay ko, mas marami na ang naninindigan para sa katotohanan. Sana tuloy-tuloy na natin ito at sana maibura na natin itong mga fake news na kumakalat, lalo na tungkol sa martial law.
Nandun na yung labanan, sir, no? Online na po talaga kasi ang hirap din magkampanya on ground, lalo na ngayong pandemya. Kasama natin yung nagpresenta na sa inyong maging barker sa inyong mga kampanya, si Mir de los Santos po ng aming information office din dito sa Ateneo. Pero yan yung taga-bulabog ng aming umaga dito sa Radyo Katipunan. Mir.
Good afternoon po sa lahat. At sorry dahil nakita niyo na kami kaninang umaga ni Ariel, nanggulo na kami sa inyo kanina, tapos bumalik pa kami ngayong hapon na with no less than.
Yes.
Diba? With no less than Sir Noel and Attorney Chel. Attorney Chel, ako po ang gusto kong tanungin sa inyo, kasi sa maniwala po kayo't hindi, director po ako ng opisina sa Ateneo na tinatawag na Office for Mission and Identity. So, naka-angkla po sa Ignatian Spirituality, ganyan. Syempre, yung mission and identity ng Ateneo. Pero
kahit nasa lista siya, ha?
Oo, di ba? Oo. Pero
Okay.
spiritualidad naman ni San Ignacio, nahuhook din dyan ng mga taga-Lasal.
Okay. Okay.
Pero sir, ako naka-curious lang ako, no? Parang kung kayo po ang tatanungin, and of course, you've already made pronouncements about running, di ba, in 2022. Ano po sa tingin ninyo yung mission at yung pagkatao ng sambayan ng Pilipino ngayon na siguro po nagbubunsod sa inyo para nga magdesisyon na sige nga, subukan nating makibahagi sa pagpapatakbo ng bayang ito. Para sa inyo po, what is the mission and identity of the Filipino people during this time? Especially siguro ang dami na nating pinagdaanan, 'di ba? Parang sabi nila pag crisis, 'di ba, naaalog yung sense of identity. 'Di ba? Parang nalilito ka kung sino ka na, kung saan ka nakakapit. So parang para sa inyo po, ano na po ba yung mission and identity ng Filipino people?
Alam niyo, sabi ng dad ko noon our history, the history of the Philippines has been really a continuing and continuous struggle to build a just society. And kung titingnan natin yung ating kasaysayan, wala pa ng panahon nga ng mga Kastila hanggang ngayon, ay yun yung struggle natin. We have not ever relented in that struggle. At ang nangunguna sa pagsusulong niyan ay walang iba kundi ang kabataan. Ako mismo, kahit nasabihin natin, minsan nadidepress tayo, naiisip natin na hopeless na ang sitwasyon, walang magpapago. Hindi ako naniniwala dyan. Historically, there will always be change. Historically, pag may kadiliman tulad ng diktadorya Marcos, darating ang araw ng liwanag. At ako, napapansin ko, umiba na nga ang ihip ng hangin ngayon, di ba? At tingin ko, lumalapit na yung araw ng pananagutan. Kaya I'm very happy to be here at this time in our history. I think that this is going to be, itong darating na 2022, magiging game changer ito. At yung pinatutunguhan ng Pilipinas ay talagang mag-iiba.
Sir, doon ako susundot ng konting tanong. Sir, ano yung mga natutunan nyo doon sa last elections nyo po na pwedeng baguhin or mag-improve pa dito sa susunod nyong pagtakbo? Kasi po parang, well, it is a matter of like 3 years. At least ngayon nakikita nyo mga kabataan nangunguna dun sa pagpaparehistro ulit. Ngayon, pagparehistro ngayon o pag-reactivate ng iba pa ng kanilang voter status. Ano po yung pwedeng lessons na pwede nating i-carry over? Ngayon, dapat manalo na kayo dito sa Senado.
Marami tayong natutunan noon. Kasi newbie ako noong 2019.
Opo.
Yung sabi nga nila, 'di ba, yung isang kampanya, dalawang aspeto yan yung tinatawag na ground war at saka yung air war. And you need to be, kailangan bihasa tayo sa parehong aspeto ng kampanya. Pagdating sa ground war noong 2019, talagang wala akong network on the ground dahil hindi naman ako politiko at wala naman akong balak talaga pumasok sa politika noon. Ngayon, masasabi ko na meron na akong extensive na network on the ground.
Galing.
Pangalawa ay yung hirap na hirap kami noon. Minsan, pag darating kami sa isang lugar, nawawala yung mga mayor, vice mayor, hindi namin mahagilap. Dahil siyempre midterm election yun eh. At alam nila na yung nasa Malacanang ay mauupo pa doon ang 3 taon. Siyempre, you cannot avoid na ayaw nilang maging object ng kanyang kung ano man, o kung ano man. Na, iba na ngayon yan dahil term-ending election ito. Next ay, pagdating naman sa air war, alam mo, dahil din sa pandemya, sa lockdown, the arena has moved to social media. Yung dating arena na TV talaga ang pinaglalabanan ay ngayon nasa social media na tayo, also because nawala nga yung franchise ng ABS-CBN. And in that respect, medyo na level ang playing field.
Yes.
For people like me who can communicate, I believe in a way that is easily acceptable to many people, have a bigger chance of getting their message across. At palagay ko, makikita nyo na rin na compared sa 2019, yung aking exposure sa social media ngayon ay ibang-iba na. Produkto rin yan ng mga natutunan namin. Dati, di ba, wala naman ako sa TikTok eh.
Opo, yun nga po, yun sasabihin ko. Kung hawak nyo yung microphone pag mga debate, ang ganda po nung exchange no, ni Amy Marcos nung panahon yun. No? Parang, at yun, parang ngayon, open kayo mag-TikTok talaga. Or ginagawa, or si Pepe talaga nire-require ka ng mag-TikTok, sir.
Sinushoot ko yung sarili ko, ha? Dito, where I am sitting now. Sinushoot ko yan. At ang kasing nakita namin ay maganda siyang plataforma sa mga issue na at advocacy ako. Hindi naman nakikita usually sa TikTok yan eh. Kaya we decided to use it for a purpose that will help people understand the law, understand the issues that our country is facing.
Sir, ang ganda lang kasi bukas kayo dun sa ganong plataforma, yung ganong venue para ipakita yung kaibang side nyo. No? So, gagawa po ba kayo ng dance number katulad ni Carlo Nograles?
Aba, mukhang malalaman nyo na lang sa mga darating na kabala.
Okay. Si Engineer James Wong na aming co-coordinator dito sa Radyo Katipunan ay nandito rin po at magtatanong.
Magandang hapon po, Attorney Chel.
Hello, James.
Ako po ay history lover and sa mga libro ko po noon sa history, nababasa ko po yung mga apelyido na Diokno, Tanyada. No, ako naman po din, later on, I was curious, so I sinearch ko sa YouTube. Attorney, ako po ay parang sana all nung mga araw na yon na mahuhusay, na magtalumpati. No, hindi lang talumpati, pero ito yung mga tao, ang sinasabi nila ay may substance. Ang tanong ko po sa inyo, Attorney, ano po kaya sa tingin niyo yung nangyari na noon kaya naman ng mga Pilipino na pumili ng mga tao na may qualification? Pero somewhere, siguro recently or I don't know, biglang iba yung naging choice or whatsoever. Kasi
Fed in the clowns na raw, sir. Yun na nga yung tawag nila.
Kasi kung ako po, confident po ako dahil, kayo po ay anak ng Senator Diokno. There is this recall pa rin po eh. Sa tingin niyo po, have we arrived at the point of no return o kaya pa po itong ma-resolve o maggamot sa ating lipunan?
Kaya pa naman, pero kung titingnan natin kasi yung last 45 years ay actually nasira yung ating demokrasya at talagang sadyang sinira yung ating demokrasya ng diktadoryang Marcos. At kasama na doon yung democratic electoral process natin. Yung nung bumalik na tayo sa demokrasya sa ilalim ng 1987 Constitution, while yung ating legal framework ay nandun, talagang naabuso siya ng ibang mga politiko. Kaya it became dati ang pinipili ng taong bayan ay yung talagang masisigasig, yung may hugot sa pagmamahal sa inang bayan. After that, naging parang popularity contest na lang eh.
Yeah.
Sino yung may magandang ad, na maganda yung sayaw, o kung ano-ano mang ganun klaseng pang-aaliw, ay sapat na. Tapos yung isa rin na hindi natin napigilan at makitil ay itong vote buying. Kasi especially noong 2019, doon sa mga na-monitor namin reports, according to the analysts, it was one of the worst elections for vote pagdating sa vote buying. And that's really sad because yung pagboboto natin, yun mismo yung esensya ng ating demokrasya. Kaya nga natin tinatawag na democratic state ang Pilipinas dahil ang bawat Pilipino ay may kanya-kanyang boto. Dapat bibilangin yon.
Yes.
That to me has been the biggest issue. Now, but there is a bigger issue, I think, that we have to discuss. And that has to do with ano ba ang naging epekto ng martial law sa ating sistema ng hustisya at sa mismong katarungan para sa ordinaryong Pilipino. Ito hindi pinag-uusapan ito ng mga historian eh. Pero the Marcos dictatorship basically poisoned our legal system. And I will give you evidence of that. Noong 1 week after dineklara niya ang martial law, naglabas si Marcos ng letter of instruction number 11. Sabi niya, kayong lahat na nasa pamahalaan, magbigay kayo sa akin ng resignation letter. Pag hindi niya nagustuhan yung isang judge o kahit sino official, tatanggapin lang niya yung resignation letter. Wala na siya sa public service. Hindi siya nakontento doon. The following year, ay binago niya ating konstitusyon. 1972 Constitution, nilagay niya doon. Lahat ng mga justice at judge, pwede kayong maupo hanggang age of retirement, pwera na lang kung hindi ko kayo nagustuhan. Basta may pirmahan akong degree, wala na kayo sa judiciary. Isipin nyo anong naging epekto niyan sa mga judge natin? Capture niya lahat, kontrolado niya ang lahat ng mga judge at justice sa buong bansa. Pero ito pa, isipin niyo yung epekto sa mga abogado. Abogado ako, gusto ko ng malalaking kliyente, malalaking kumpanya. If I want to get clients, kailangan dikit ako sa Malacanang. Para pag makita ako ng judge, matatakot ang judge sa akin. Ako, pag mag-rule ako na laban dito, i-report ako sa Malacanang, bukas na bukas, wala na akong trabaho. That basically destroyed the independence of the judiciary and the integrity of the legal profession. Kaya ako mismo sinasabi ko ito sa mga estudyante ko sa law school eh. Akala niyo mahirap mag-aral ng law, pumasa ng bar. Pag kayo ay naging abogado na, you will be faced with the biggest moral dilemma of your life. Am I going to practice law honestly? Or am I going to practice law by fixing cases? And that's a direct result of the dictatorship. Kaya pagdating sa issue ng pananagutan, bakit hanggang ngayon ang hirap-hirap magkaroon ng pananagutan, accountability? Dahil sirang-sira yung ating justice system. At hindi man lang yan pinag-uusapan ng mga politiko. Ayaw nilang pag-usapan yan. Kasi ang ibig sabihin ay pag matino na yung ating justice system, sila pa maunang makukulong. Siyempre, ayaw nila yon. At sa pangalawa, pag matino ang justice system natin, empowered ang tao. Ayaw nila yon. They don't want that. They want the people to remain ignorant and to remain voters who will vote for the nicest dancer and the best-looking politician. Yun ang gusto nila.
Grabe, Mir. Tsaka Ariana, she has such calming effect. He explains things clearly, pero kalma. Pero sir, kunyari, yung pag-destroy ng justice system, at kahit na COMELEC, for example, you think, yung sa PDP Laban Row, may iba lang tayo ng topic, no? You think, kakatig yan kay Senator Manny Pacquiao or dun sa partido ni Presidente, dun sa pag-accredit as PDP Laban? Kasi parang yung mga tao, sabi niya, ay controlled ng Malacanang din or appointee ng Presidente yon. Ano yung nakikita niyong mangyayari, pwedeng mangyari?
Well, nasa kamay na yan ng COMELEC kung sino yung i-recognize nila sa competing factions dyan. Pero ang pagkaalam ko naman, they have second options, if ever, kung sino man yung matalo dyan sa away na yan.
Okay. Tapos sir, ito pa. Yung complaint nyo ba tungkol sa overspending or yung vote buying, napatlapas nyo yan sa COMELEC nung 2019?
Yung problema kasi dyan ay ang hirap-hirap siyang i-document.
That's true.
Yung mga tumatanggap ng pera para bumoto, alam nga naman aaminin nila sa
That's true. Pero sir, alam nyo ba yung sistema ngayon? No? Pinaplano na ng mga partido ngayon kung paano magre-release ng cash ni GCash. Narinig nyo na po yun, di ba?
Yes, yes.
At 50,000 lang yung limit ng GCash kasi a day. So ngayon pa lang, pinaplano na kung paano hanggang eleksyon, mabibigyan ng ayuda yung mga tao. Tapos parang ganyan, yung bagong vote buying. Paano nyo iniisip i-thwart yan, sir?
There has to be a very strong nationwide educational campaign through all social media, radio, television. At sana may paabot natin sa lahat yung kalagahan ng kanya-kanyang boto. Maliban doon, tingin ko lang kung talagang may political will ang pamahalaan, dapat mag-assign sila ng magbabantay sa bawat voting area. We can do this we have the technology to do this. Kung ang mga pulis ngayon ay kailangan may body cam, pwede rin tayo maglagay ng mga CCTV sa mga area na alam natin na doon sila magkakaroon ng mga transaksyon. Doon naman sa issue ng mga GCash, may electronic trail yan.
Okay.
Kaya kung magko-cooperate lang ang mga telecom, there will be ways to get evidence to see how money was transferred during the election or right before the voting.
Grabe talaga, kailangan maging mapagmatsyag. At nandito na po yung bunso naman namin sa Radyo Katipunan. Gagaling lang niya ng klase, si Maxine Cruz. Max?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Attorney Chel.
Hello, Maxine.
Go shoot your question, Max.
All right. So, we know that one of your taglines is #Chel lang, and you're known for handling stressful situations very chill, very relaxed. But according to your TikTok, I saw you answer one of the commenters saying that there were times when you were younger when you wish you weren't as chill or you took more action. So, for the youth and for our audience members, when are the times we should be more chill and when are the times we should be more active? Where do we draw the line?
I think in times of stressful situations, especially when so many things are happening around us, it's really a plus to be the calm at the center of the storm. And because of my training as a lawyer, especially, I go to court a lot, kailangan na composed ka. Isipin nyo kung haharap ka sa Supreme Court, 15 justice ang pwedeng magpa-recite sa'yo. Talagang, if you are not in the center of yourself, you will really have a hard time doing well. But at the same time, when I was young kasi, I was really more of an introvert. And if I had the choice between going around socializing and reading a book or writing, I would rather write and read than socialize. In fact, isa sa pinagmamayabang ko, nung ako ay nasa UP, naging fellow ako ng Creative Writing Center ng UP, at may summer workshop kami. Ang pumirma ng aking certificate, which I still have, ay walang iba kundi si Nick Joaquin, si Franz Arceliana, at si Ricardo Demetilio. Ang mga bigatin sa writing scene yan.
Okay.
But, looking back, I see that perhaps I should have been more active in my student life in terms of student activities or extracurricular activities. Kasi sa UP, mas tutok ako doon sa ganun klaseng gawain at sa pag-aaral.
Ang galing. Pero sir, ayan na nga, kakaiba na ngayon kasi yun nga, at least meron kang anak na nag-guide sa'yo sa pag-TikTok. Si Pepe, no? Tapos doon, pwede ka nang tanghaling Jacqueline Jose sa politika kasi monotone at di ba parang talagang ganun talaga chill lang talaga yung delivery, pero yun may sinasabi. Heto na po ang representative naman. Kasama namin siya sa Radyo Katipunan bilang trainee noon. Representative ng LGBT community ng PUP. Ang student leader na si Tep Nazario. Tep?
Yes po, good afternoon po, Sir Noel, Ate Chel. Attorney Chel and to everyone. Attorney Chel, bilang attorney po, paano po ninyo papapanumbalik ang tiwala ng taong bayan sa serbisyo ng gobyerno po? Kasi po, attorney, kung mapapansin po ninyo, mas pinipili ng mga tao po na sumangguni ang mga tao sa ilang mga public service programs po sa TV na hindi na po natin papanangaranan po.
Pangalanan mo na rin. Sige na.
Sa gobyerno po.
Nakakaban niya sa politika yon.
Wanted. Yung basta yung may sumbong at sa isang radio studio. Yung mga in action.
Okay. Sir Chel.
Paano po mapapagpapan?
Para maibalik natin ang kumpiyansa ng taong bayan sa ating mga namamahala at mismo sa pamahalaan, kailangan ipakita natin na yung mga andyan ay may responsibilidad. Diba, mismo sinasabi niyo yun nasa sine yan, diba? With great power comes great responsibility. That means that there must be accountability. Kung ikaw kung ang taas-taas ng iyong kapangyarihan, kung ikaw ay magkasala, dapat mismo manggagaling sa inyo, aaminin natin na nagkamali tayo. At kung ayaw mo naman aminin, nandyan dapat ang batas para masigurado natin na talagang mananagot ka dun sa mga nagawa mong pang-aabuso o katiwalian. Yun ang tingin kong kulang na kulang sa atin. Kaya pag nakausap mo yung ordinaryong mamamayan, sasabihin niya sa atin, kasi naman malaking tao yan kaya hindi napaparusahan yan. Siguro kaya po ganyan yan kasi kahit na nga abuso yan, malaking tao yan. Kumbaga parang double standard, doble kara ang pananagutan sa atin.
That's right.
That cannot be. We have to find a way to resolve that. And for me, it requires determination plus dapat may masampulan. Diba?
That's true. Yun nga yung talking about accountability, no? Yung ayaw banggain yung mga nasa kapangyarihan. May nababalitaan tayo, di ba? Marami talagang sa radio or sa TV na tagapag-areglo, parang isusumbong mo nga doon sa ibang mga tao. Tapos in the end, pag malalaking tao yung kakastuhan, parang idadaan sa pao. Hindi personal, di ba, na effort. Sir, kayo, di ba, sanay kayo dun sa ang regalo sa yung bayad sa inyo, pansit or pagkain, di ba? At alam ko nung pandemya, nung nagra-rally diyan ng anti-terror bill dito sa UP, sabi nyo yung madadampot, kaya tinago ko rin yung number nyo kasi yung mga madadampot doon, kayo yung magbibigay ng free legal assistance. So sir, kayo yung nasa frente ng lahat ng yan. At this point, meron pa rin po bang nakakulong ng walang dahilan? Walang malaking dahilan? Oh, well, of course, you will say Laila de Lima is the pinakamalaking case na nakulong tapos yun na yung of injustice. Meron pa po ba tayong kailangang malaman ng mga samples at sabihin sa mga tao, it's not the justice system is not working?
Meron kaming na-monitor ng mga kaso ng mga simpleng naglabag ng quarantine violations. Kasi ang problema, ang trato sa kanila ay sa loob pa rin ng criminal justice system. Ang parusa kasi ay pa rin fine or imprisonment. Dapat, ang tingin ko, ang dapat approach ng pamahalaan pagdating sa quarantine violations ay community service ang dapat na penalty. For example, ito talagang grabe itong isang nangyari. Lumabas siya ng bahay niya, medyo gabi na, dahil talagang gutom yung kanyang mga anak. Bibili lang siya sana ng pagkain. Di niya namalayan, curfew na pala. Next thing nahuli siya. Okay, sige, nahuli siya. May ordinance naman Dinala siya, pinroses siya. Dinala siya sa isang, parang gym. Kasi doon daw muna pinaprocess yung mga quarantine violators. Maya't maya, dinala siya na sa parang detention center. Pero wala siyang pampiyansa, wala siyang pera. Wala siyang access sa kanyang pamilya o sa mga kakilala niya na makakatulong sa kanya. Wala rin siyang access sa abogado. 37 days bago siya nakalaya.
Wow.
Iisip, makatao ba yon? Makatarungan ba yon? Paano ba naman ang mga anak niya nung 37 days na yon? At ang kwento niya ay hindi siya nag-iisa doon na ganon. Yung iba niya nakasama doon, ganon din ang problema. Is that the way we should be treating our people? Tama nga naman, sige, nag-violate sila ng quarantine. Pero hindi ba dapat makatao yung parusa natin? Okay na naman yung community service, ba't pa natin gagawin na may kulong pa o may fine? Yeah. Yung mismong pagbayad ng piyansa, kung wala ka namang kinikita, paano magbabayad ng 1,000 o 5,000, depende sa area, ano? So, yun ang isa. And more than that, ito hindi alam ng karamihan to Number 1 tayo o number 2 tayo sa buong mundo sa overcrowding sa ating mga jail at detention center. Mismo ang Commission on Audit ay naglabas ng report recently, 415% ang overcrowding natin sa jail. So kung ikaw ay nasampahan lang ng kaso, presume innocent ka pa rin. Kasi hindi ka pa naman nahatulan, magdudusa ka na sa loob because the conditions are simply inhumane. And that is really a big issue that we don't talk about.
That's true. Na parang tapos sinabi, protektahan yung mahihirap, no? Parang pero ito yung nangyayari. Na in the end, champion ng mahihirap ang tingin natin sa ating mga leaders. Pero ang mga taong nasasangkot sa mga ganyan, sir, yung mga talagang walang-wala. Ariel, next round of questions.
Oo, Attorney Chel, ang dami-dami ko sanang tanong. Pero ito ang pipiliin kong tanong. Attorney Chel, gagamitin ko yung term na plot twist. Parang ang hinihingi nating plot twist ngayon ay magkaroon talaga ng unified na, di ba, na opposition para magkaroon tayo ng malinaw na tindig para magkasuportahan tayo, ano. So, paano kaya pwedeng yun sana yung plot twist na gusto nating makita at hindi yung kasi Attorney Chel, para meron plot twist na paano kung biglang ang lumakas yung kabilang panig. Sorry meron akong ako po ay para kasing basag-basag pa rin, hindi ba? Sa parehong mga panig ay may mga pagkabasag-basag at sa isang banda ang gusto natin ay mag-plot twist patungo sa isang united opposition. Pero paano? So paano kaya mas mapangyayari yun? Anong mga thoughts ninyo on how we can what thoughts can we have para mas lumapit tayo o mas maging aktibo tayo towards that, para hindi siya hinihintay na plot twist but we are more active in making that plot twist happen.
Tama ka doon, Ariel. Pero konting pasyensya lang, tingin ko. Yung lahat naman ng leader ng ating opposition ay alam nila yung importansya ng pagsasama. If we don't get behind a unity slate, it's going to be so difficult to get victory in the coming elections. And I assure you that everyone in the opposition knows that. Ngayon, ang issue lang syempre, kailangan magkakaroon tayo ng bigayan.
That's true. Sakripisyo, di ba? Yeah.
Yes. Yun yung talagang pinag-uusapan pa rin hanggang ngayon. At sana naman ay mabukas ang puso at isip ng lahat ng involved dyan na para sa bayan, para sa interest ng ating mga kabataan, lalo na sa kinabukasan natin lahat, ay magbigayan din naman sila. Yun.
Sir, bago magtanong si Mir, no, I'll pursue that line of thought. Sir, nakita ko yung interview nyo kay Karen Davila at sinabi bilang senador or senatorial candidate, okay sa inyong i-adopt kayo ng iba't ibang partido, no, na mga line-up. So okay, pabor sa inyo yon. So okay kayong i-adopt ni Isko Moreno, ni Manny Pacquiao, ni Lenny Robredo if ever. Tama po ba yon?
Well, yes. Ganito yun, no? I'm fully behind the initiative of Isang Bayan. I really hope that they will come up with a unity slate and sana talaga lahat ng opposition ay talagang yun ang itutulak.
Pero pag nilagay ko yun sa KBL,
ayun na nga. Hindi ko pa natatapos yung sagot ko kasi.
Okay, sorry.
Pero syempre, hindi naman ako papayag na sasama sa partido na hindi pareho ang aming values at pareho ang aming mga prinsipyo.
Okay.
That's where we have to draw the line. Now,
Okay.
don't ask me to name names kasi at this point, I don't want to sabotage any kind of efforts to obtain a unity slate. Kaya talagang iniiwasan ko muna magbigay ng mga pangalan dahil para naman, let's just respect the process and see what will happen. But
Pero sir, yung at least malinaw sa inyo na hindi Marcos at Robredo, hindi Marcos at Duterte.
Ayun, klarong-klaro naman tayo dyan.
Okay, at least.
Kaya rin pala sabi ni Attorney Chel, patience, may hinihingi siyang ganun. Naunawaan ko yung konteksto ng patience hinihingi ni Attorney Chel.
Hinihiling sa ating lahat. No? It's really patience and understanding. So, it's that. Isang bayan and sir, so you consider all the others opposition then? Okay lang, basta under sambayan?
Let's just say that for purposes of respecting the process, they are considering these people as a possible opposition. My own personal views have nothing to do with that process. Kaya.
Ang galing sumagot. Ang galing sumagot. Sir, hire namin talaga kayong lawyer. Mir, go!
Ayan, dahil napakagaling nga at napakakalmadong sumagot ni Attorney Chel. Gusto kong tanungin sa kanya, may pagka-Miss Universe question, but at the same time, dahil mahilig po akong mag-videoke, at isa sa mga favorite kong kinakanta sa videoke, ang awit ni Regine Velasquez na Kung Maibabalik Ko Lang. So, ang tanong ko sa inyo, Attorney Chel, ano po yung mga bagay na gusto ninyong ibalik sa sambayanan? Limitless. Lahat ng gusto nyong ibalik or lahat ng sino man, kung ano man, basta any and everything that you want to return, to have a comeback.
Ang ganda lang kasi yung genealogy niya, di ba? Yung history niya bilang Diokno. Ang laki ng pwedeng ibalik.
Correct.
Yan, oo nga. So, kantahan ko si Sir para mas
Huwag na muna daw, pasagutin mo na muna siya.
Ayan. Okay. Ano, Sir, yung mga gusto nyo pong maibalik?
Well, unang-una, yung paggalang natin sa batas, yung tinatawag na rule of law. Na walang pwedeng mangibabaw sa batas. Kahit sino ka pa, kahit Pangulo ka ng Pilipinas, ikaw yung pinakamayaman na Pilipino, susunod ka pa rin dapat sa batas. Ang boss dapat ng lahat ng nasa pamahalaan natin ay hindi ang Pangulo. Ang boss natin lahat ay ang batas, lalo na sa ligang batas. At pati ang Pangulo, hindi siya ang boss. Ang boss niya, ang taong bayan, ang lahat ng Pilipino, kasi yun ang nakalagay sa batas natin eh. All government authority emanates from the people. Second na gusto kong makita ulit, yung delikadesa. Kasi talagang out na yan ngayon sa mga politiko natin.
Ito po, attorney, magsa-standing ovation ako pagdating sa delikadesa.
Totoo. Naku, kung yun lang ang dalawang pwede natin ibalik, masaya na ako. Okay na yun.
Pero marami pa. Pero maraming salamat doon, sir. James, your next question.
Hello po, attorney. May question po ako. Attorney, bakit po gano'n, no? Pag elective position, ito yung requirements. Pero pag nag-apply ka ng trabaho sa gobyerno, dami mong fill upan na forms, ang dami mong kailangang requirements, di ba? Pero di ba, as elective position, di ba dapat magsiservisyo ka sa bayan, so dapat you have this kind of credentials, di ba? Which will somehow prove na you're worthy as public officials. Kasi di ba, halimbawa, senador, tatakbo kang senador, tapos wala ka namang alam sa batas, anong gagawin mong batas, di ba? So, halimbawa po ako ay botante, tapos kayo po ay lawyer, tatakbo po kayo senador, boboto ko po kayo kasi may alam po kayo sa batas. So, bakit po may ganong difference?
Alam mo, matagal na rin pinagdedebatihan yan eh. Pero ito yung gagawa tayo ng hypothetical. Ako na mismo magsasabi. Let's say maglagay tayo ng additional qualifications sa pagtakbo sa Senate o sa pagkapangulo. Kung may tumakbo halimbawa na kailangan may master's degree, let's say pero alam nyo, marami akong kakilalang may master's degree, marurunong nga sila doon sa kanilang disiplina, pero hindi ko sila iboboto kahit may master's degree sila. Dahil ang magiging issue ko sa kanila, alam ko yan, magnanakaw yan eh. Meron din naman akong kilala na walang degree, pero talagang may integridad at ang hugot niya ay para sa mga Pilipino. Kahit walang degree yun, iboboto ko yun. Kaya ang short answer ko dyan, adding qualifications will not guarantee that we will get good people into government, because really the real variable there is how honest and how dedicated is that person going to be. Ngayon, second, hindi salungat siya sa sa ating demokrasya kung magdadagdag tayo ng qualification. Kasi ang konsepto natin ng demokrasya, kahit sino ka, basta't ikaw ay mamamayan Pilipino, ay pwede kang tumakbo at maging isang leader ng bayan. Nasa taong bayan na yan kung sino yung pipiliin nila. Kaya sa akin, ang solusyon dyan, hindi magdagdag ng qualification, kundi mag-voter education at maiangat natin ang kaalaman ng lahat para pagpipili sila at boboto sila ng kandidato, yung mga talagang dapat maluklok yung ipepwesto natin.
It's on us. It's really on us. Yeah. Max, go.
So another important thing to touch on is the environment. And we know that you're a human rights lawyer with a very special place in your heart for the environment. So how would you encourage people to be more eco-friendly? And personally, what are your favorite environmentally friendly practices that you can encourage people to do as well?
Well, personally, I'm an anti-plastics person. So pag ako'y nag-grocery, may dala akong eco bag palagi. Kung bibili akong pagkain, kung kaya kong magdala ng Tupperware, nagdadala ako. Kasi ayaw akong mag-ipon ng mga plastic. At sana rin magkaroon tayo ng maayos na batas dyan. I am a latecomer to environmental defense. Matagal ko na rin gustong humawak ng mga environmental case, pero yung una kong nahawakan, mga 5 years ago pa lang. Pero when I took on the case, it was a very interesting case kasi issue ng ating pagre-regulate ng pollution na nanggagaling sa mga coal-fired plants. Alam naman natin, we need energy. Okay lang sa akin yun. Pero sana, maayos naman yung pagmamanman natin sa kanilang mga nagiging pollution na emission. Yung nakakalungkot ay, even if we have the laws for it, some of our agencies don't have the equipment to monitor it. So yun yung isang pinaglaban namin na doon ko na-meet yung iba't ibang mga environmental defenders. At ang sasayang kasama ng mga environmental defenders. After that, meron naman kaming case na yung mga overfishing naman ang naging issue namin. Kasi alam nyo, 10 out of our 13 major fishing grounds are really overfished. Ang natatamaan dyan, yung mga maliliit na mangingisda. Ang nangyayari, yung mga malaking commercial fishing vessel ay pumapasok sa kanilang mga area. Siyempre, wala nang hanap buhay ngayon yung ating maliliit na mangingisda. May batas na yan, yung Fisheries Code, na dapat meron monitoring device ang bawat commercial fishing vessel. By technology na monitor yan kung sila'y pumasok sa isang bawal na area, malalaman ngayon ng pamahalaan at masisita sila, etc. Ang problema noon ay hindi natupad yon for several years. And I'm happy to report that just recently, ay finally nailabas na nila yung mga rules and regulations for that. So hopefully that will address our overfishing. But you know, kaya ko talagang naging malapit sa puso yung issue ng kalikasan natin dahil it's not for us. My generation, pa-exit na kami. It's really for my children and the future generations. We cannot afford to have a destroyed environment. We have to do everything we can to protect it.
Ang cool, no? Parang ibang klase. Well, Tep, shoot your last question.
Okay, last question po. Total Attorney Chel po, di ba hindi na po matatanggin na tatakbo po kayo by next year. So, on your first day po, ano po ang unang bill na maaari niyo pong isulong po?
Well, let me say this. Tingin ko ang unang priority dapat ng susunod na administrasyon yung pamamahala sa pandemya.
That's true.
Yung issue ng ekonomiya natin, yung mga MSMEs na walang makuhang suporta sa pamahalaan na talagang hirap na hirap na mag-operate pa rin. Yung ating mga manggagawa na walang mahanap na trabaho, lalong-lalo na ang kabataan natin dahil times 3 pala ang unemployment rate ng youth natin compared to the national rate. So that must be addressed immediately by government. In terms of legislation, it may not even require legislation, but it does require immediate action. Pagdating naman sa legislation, tingin ko yung isa na dapat natin tingnan, yung mismong paano ba dapat i-manage ang isang pandemic.
Yeah.
Kasi sa ngayon, meron tayong task force, yung IATF, pero hindi yan gawa ng batas.
Yeah.
Gawa yan ng executive order. Ang nag-create pa nga niyan si dating presidenteng Pinoy Aquino. Diba?
Yeah.
Baka siguro balikan natin yun at isabatas natin yun para may representation din ang private sector. Kasi sa ngayon, pure government representatives yan. Pero talaga naman involved yan at apektado ang ordinaryong tao. Second, I think science has to be more represented in that committee or that task force. We have some of the best scientists in the world. We are not fighting an armed army, we are fighting a virus that we cannot even see. We need a management that is capable of addressing that, evidence-based, scientific-based. Ayun.
And eventually, produce our own vaccines.
Exactly. Yeah. Bakit nagawa ng ibang bansa yun? Kasi they know the importance and they tap their own scientists and science resources.
Umihirit po si Tep ng huling tanong. Tep, bilis.
Yes. Alam ko na po na karamihan ng mga supporters ko niya ay LGBT, or mostly from LGBTQIA+ community, and napaka-vocal ng support niyo po sa amin. So, paano po palalakasin ang SOGI bill po sa Senado? Knowing that we are in a conservative setting na ganyan, na nasa Senado. So, paano niyo po ito palalakasin? Paano po kayo magiging mas vocal, maging progress, mas maging liberal at mas maging mas maging comprehensive po dito, sir?
Galing, no? Kasi isa sa mga nagpupush sa inyo si Vice Ganda, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unang-una, ang panawagan ko ay hindi ko makakayanan niya na mag-isa. Kaya sana sa pagpipili niyo at pagboboto niyo sa Mayo ng 2022 ay mas marami pa tayong may pasok na mga progresibo sa ating Senado. Dahil magiging numbers, issue ng numbers, ilan ang makukuha natin na senador na boboto at papabor dyan sa ating SOGI bill. As long as we have the numbers, you have my word. Ako mismo, I will push that and push it as hard as I can. Ngayon, of course, ang isa rin challenge sa pagiging sa isang mambabatas ay, syempre, it's a question of being able to work with other people on the Senate and being able to get them on your side. So yun, sa akin, I will take on that challenge and see if I can persuade using all the skills I have the other senators to open their hearts and their minds to this kind of legislation and to vote for it because it's a good law and we need it.
Ang galing, sir. Sa dami ng struggles niyo, sir, nakita rin namin na pinersecute din kayo ng administration na to, no? Even calling you names, pati yung ngipin niyo po, pinag-initan. Sir, final words as to like how we should take everything and then like, sabi ko nga kasalanan na lang namin pag wala kayo sa Senado sa sunod. Now, with all the things that you're offering us, how should we take all these from the leadership now and yun nga parang yung pagbabago na ino-offer niyo po?
Alam niyo, yung ating bansa ay pabata ng pabata. Ang ating median age ngayon ay nasa 24 years old, more or less. Ang mga botante natin are getting younger and younger every election. Noong 2019, more or less, ang pwedeng bumoto na youth ay mga 33 million. Ngayon darating na 2022, ang estimate namin ay nasa 40 million na kayo.
God.
Basta't unang-una kayo ay magrehistro at pangalawa kayo ay boboto. Gusto kong marinig yung inyong boses. Gusto kong marinig yung inyong hinaing at saloobin. Panahon na na kayo na magsasalita, na kayo na magdedesisyon kung sino ang magiging susunod na liderato natin. And I cannot wait to hear you in 2022. Thank you.
Sir, maraming salamat. Sabi ko nga, kasalanan na lang namin kung hindi namin nasuklian yung pagpapresenta nyo ng ganyang plataforma sa amin na makakatulong sa bayan. Maraming salamat, sir. Maraming salamat. We'll see you again here. We'll have our Katipunan Town Hall. Kahit Katipunan po at iba kung yung kulay ninyo yon, walang kulay sa eleksyon, no? Parang lahat tayo magtutulungan. Maraming salamat. Level Up will be right back. We'll have one last segment with all these co-anchors sa Radyo Katipunan kasi minsan-minsan lang kami nagsasama-sama. Tingnan namin yung takeaway at natutunan namin ngayong session na to. Sir, Attorney Chel, Diokno, maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Chel. Salamat.
Sir, kaisan nyo kami, promise.
Ang sarap lang.
Seryoso po yung kahit ano man ang dagdag na boses pa na kailangan nyo, Attorney Chel.
Oo.
Sir, talaga commitment namin yan. Salamat po. Salamat po. Thank you. We'll just have one last gap talking about what we learned today. Kapatid, sobrang
Di kailanman mapipigilan pagbuhos ng ulan. Ang buhay sadyang ganyan.
Kaya ng papago-pagong pag-ihip ng hangin. Lahat ay lilipas at magsasalita.
Huwag kang mabahala, huwag mataranta. Hindi kailangan ang mag-alilangan pa.
Isipin mo laging nandito lamang ang aking balikat. Sa'yo'y nakaabang.
Asahan mo, hindi ka iiwan sa mundo. Lahat may hangganan, asahan mo. Wala nang atrasan sa iyong bawat hakbang na pupuntahan. Pangako kailanman agad akong nandyan. Sang tawag mo lang.
At tuwing nagdidilim ang langit, di ba't nagpapakita ang buwan? Hanggang mag-umaga na naman.
Tara't hintayin na natin
Sikat ang iyong araw
hanggang sa magliwanag muli ang lahat.
Asahan mo, hindi ka iiwan sa mundo. Lahat may hangganan, asahan mo. Wala nang atrasan sa iyong bawat hakbang na pupuntahan. Pangako kailanman agad akong nandyan. Sang tawag mo lang. Asahan mo, hindi ka iiwan sa mundo. Lahat may hangganan, asahan mo. Wala nang atrasan sa iyong bawat hakbang na pupuntahan. Pangako kailanman agad akong nandyan. Sang tawag mo sang tawag mo lang.
Mga katipuneros, it's time to level up! Your talk variety program showcasing the best in media and other fields. As we feature the most loved personalities and the best practices of what we truly refer to as Magis. Together with multi-awarded multimedia guru Mr. Noel Ferrer, let's all level up every Fridays from 3 to 6 p.m. here on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM. Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.